Welcome to This Explainer. Let's dive right in and unravel the massive mysteries of Bhangarh Fort. Now, this is a place that's visited by millions of tourists during the day, but absolutely abandoned by everyone the second the sun sets. Tucked away in the Aravalli Hills of Rajasthan, India, this massive fortress city used to be a booming hub of life. We're talking over 9,000 homes, grand palaces, sprawling markets, the whole shebang. But today, it's entirely in ruins. There's not a single roof left intact, and it holds the terrifying title of being the absolute most haunted place in all of India. So you've probably heard the terrifying campfire stories surrounding this place. Take the most famous one, for instance, the story of the three boys who supposedly snuck into the fort with a flashlight late at night. Legend says one of them fell into a dry well, and while his friends were rushing him to the hospital, they all died in a mysterious, fatal car crash. Locals will swear it wasn't an accident, but the fort's curse claiming their lives for breaking the rules. But today, we're going to look past all that folklore and see what the actual evidence says. Now, what truly fuels the belief that something supernatural is going on inside these roofless ruins is this official warning board right at the main gate. And here's the thing, it wasn't put up by some scared local or a superstitious security guard. It was placed by the government itself. It explicitly states that entry after sunset is strictly prohibited by the Archaeological Survey of India. Naturally, when you see a strict government-mandated curfew on a crumbling ruin, your imagination is going to run completely wild. The local folklore is pretty intense, and it basically blames the city's roofless state on a timeline of really dark curses. The first story is about a sadhu named Baba Balunath. He supposedly allowed the fort to be built, but only on the condition that its shadow would never, ever fall on his home. Well, a later ruler built the palace up to 7 stories, the shadow hit the house, and boom! That broke the rule and triggered a curse that doomed the city. The second, even darker tale involves a dark chantric named Sinkia. He was desperately in love with the beautiful Princess Ratnavati and tried to enchant her perfume with black magic. But the princess figured it out and tossed the potion onto a giant boulder. The enchanted boulder literally rolled over and crushed the tantric, but right before he died, he cursed the entire city to utter ruin, condemning everyone to never experience reincarnation. These terrifying stories have spawned literally decades of chilling claims from tourists, locals, and even Bollywood film crews. People report hearing women crying and screaming in the dark, or the super creepy sound of glass bangles breaking. Some even claim to hear the festive sounds of a wedding party echoing through the empty stone walls. Others say they'll be walking near the old market and suddenly smell wafts of sweet perfumes out of nowhere. There are intense, paranoid sensations of being watched by a shadowy figure. There's even a really disturbing account of a stalled scooter, where a mysterious man suddenly restarted it with a single touch and ominously whispered to the riders that the spirits wanted them. But here is the absolute catch. When we actually try to find historical proof of these famous characters, we find absolutely nothing. Zero. When historians dig into the archives, there are no verified records of Princess Ratnavati, the tantric Singhia, or the sadhu ever existing. There are no contemporary documents, no stone inscriptions, nothing. The entire haunted foundation of Bhangarh is built on folklore that's just been passed down from generation to generation, getting a little more dramatic with every single telling. And even the modern legends fall apart under scrutiny. Remember that tragic story of the 3 friends dying in a car crash after sneaking in? Yeah, there is no police FIR, no news report, and absolutely no documentation of this ever happening. It's pure urban legend, designed to make the myth feel real. In reality, numerous paranormal investigators and thrill seekers have spent the entire night inside the fort, completely unharmed. The head of the Indian Paranormal Society actually spent a whole night there with EMF readers and thermal cameras, and famously concluded that there are absolutely no ghosts to be found. Okay, moving on to part 1, the science of fear. Why exactly do we feel ghosts? So, if the ghosts aren't real, why do so many highly rational people genuinely experience pure terror when they visit? Well, the answer lies in science, specifically the fascinating work of a British engineer named Vic Tandy back in the 1980s. Tandy was working all alone in his laboratory one evening when he suddenly felt this immense wave of cold dread. He started sweating, the hair on the back of his neck stood up, and he even saw a gray, shadowy figure emerge right in his peripheral vision. He thought he'd seen a ghost and bolted out of there. But the next day, he noticed a metal fencing foil vibrating on his desk. He traced that vibration back to a newly installed fan that was generating a specific, invisible sound wave at exactly 19 hertz. And this brings us right to the concept of infrasound, which are sound waves below 20 hertz. Now, human ears cannot audibly hear them, but our bodies can physically feel the vibrations. These deep, silent vibrations cause very real physiological reactions in the human body. Things like dizziness, extreme anxiety, and that distinct, creepy feeling of being watched. Because Bhangarh sits in a highly active seismic zone in the Aravalli Hills, the wind rushing through all those crumbling stone ruins, combined with minor earth movements, naturally generates this exact infrasound. The fort's environment literally forces your body into a state of physical panic. To understand just how powerful these invisible forces are, let's look at the 2008 HAUNT project conducted by researchers in London. They took 79 participants and put them in a completely empty, plain white room. No spooky ambiance whatsoever, but they hid devices emitting infrasound and electromagnetic fields. Over 20% of the people reported feeling an invisible presence, and 8% felt pure, unadulterated terror. But here is the massive twist. The experiences were totally identical, even when the researchers turned the devices completely off. The strongest factor wasn't just the sound waves, it was suggestibility. If you're told a place is haunted, your brain will literally artificially manufacture a haunted experience for you. So think about it. When you visit India's most famously haunted fort, your brain is already completely in haunted mode. From reading internet rumors and watching all those dramatic videos, this triggers something called pareidolia. It's an evolutionary psychological phenomenon where the human brain automatically detects faces and human figures in random shapes or shadows. We are literally hardwired to look for faces as a survival mechanism. So when you're terrified and hyper-aware, your brain ensures that every dark corner, every broken pillar, or jagged wall looks exactly like a terrifying human shadow staring right back at you. All right, let's shift gears to part 2, the real dangers. What actually lurks in the dark at Bhangarh? Because while the ghosts might just be in our heads, the physical danger at night is completely 100% real. Those horrifying sounds that locals and tourists report, they have very earthly origins. The terrifying screams of crying women echoing in the dark, those are actually the distinct distress calls of local hyenas. Seriously, if you listen to a hyena in the wild, it sounds incredibly similar to a human screaming. And those ghostly footsteps or the rustling of trees, that's just the resident monkey population moving around through the dense foliage in the pitch black. And honestly, that reveals the real reason behind that famous government warning sign. The Archaeological Survey of India didn't put it up to protect you from angry spirits. They put it up to protect you from falling rocks, because those 400-year-old structures are highly unstable and there's absolutely no artificial lighting out there. But more importantly, the fort is only 50 kilometers away from the sprawling Sariska Tiger Reserve. At night, Bengal tigers, leopards, panthers, and hyenas regularly wander right into the ruins. The sign is literally just there to stop you from becoming a big cat's midnight snack.
Which brings us to part 3, the true demise. How exactly did 9,000 homes become ruins?
If magic potions and curses didn't destroy this bustling city, we have to look at the harsh historical reality. And the truth is, the city slowly lost its prominence in stages. First, there was a political decline when the ruling family just packed up and shifted their base to the newer Ajabgarh fort nearby. Then, military conflict struck when the ambitious King Sawai Jai Singh attacked and captured Bhangarh in 1720, effectively turning it into a mere secondary town. But military defeat didn't wipe it off the map entirely. It was a catastrophic natural disaster that dealt the final blow. The true killer of Bhangarh was the horrific Chalisa famine of 1783. This was an absolutely devastating event driven by a severe El Niño drought that slammed North India. The epicenter was right in this region, and the impact was just unimaginable. In some areas, up to 2/3 of the population died. Water and food completely vanished from the arid Rajasthan landscape. Staying in Bhangarh became physically impossible, and the entire surviving population was forced to simply pack up whatever they could carry and flee the city forever in a desperate search for survival. And they never came back. Now for part 4. The psychology of ghost stories. Why do we actually prefer the myth over the facts? Honestly, why would we much rather tell spooky stories about ancient curses than talk about an 18th century climate disaster? Because our brains naturally crave a good narrative structure. When we look at history, a massive, deadly drought that forces a migration feels random, chaotic, and frankly a bit boring. It reminds us that we're completely at the mercy of nature. But a story about curses and villains? Now that is satisfying. It has a clear cause and effect, a recognizable bad guy, and it gives us the illusion of control. Transforming an uncontrollable famine into a dramatic tale about a wicked tantric getting crushed by a boulder makes a mass tragedy so much easier for the human mind to comprehend and pass down. Plus, let's be real, no one has any financial incentive to debunk the myth today. That most haunted tag is incredibly lucrative, it drives immense tourism to the area, and the local economy heavily relies on the myth of the haunted fort to sell tours, food, and souvenirs. On top of that, social media algorithms heavily reward supernatural claims. An influencer posting a dramatic video about a spooky encounter in the dark is going to get millions of views, while a video explaining an 18th century drought simply won't. The myth is quite literally a booming business. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a brilliant quote from Marie Curie. Nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more, so that we may fear less. By substituting our supernatural fears with scientific and historical facts, things like infrasound, pareidolia, and the tragic Chalisa famine, we don't ruin the mystery of Bhangarh Fort. We actually uncover a much more fascinating, deeply human reality. So the next time you hear a ghost story, ask yourself, what history is hiding just beneath the surface?